Countdown. Well, you know what's completely weird is a couple of years ago you couldn't press a phone and just go live out to the world. You had to roll in all kinds of equipment,
cameras and mics, and
yeah,
it's a different world.
Yeah, so creatives, artists, musicians, thank you for joining us this Tuesday at 7. We are live from the King Crow Tattoo and Social Club. Is that right? Did I get that name right?
That's right.
And we're interviewing Harry Lawrence. Some of you may recognize this background because it was many months ago and it was cold when we went ahead and interviewed Matt, and we were hoping to grab the both of you that night.
Yeah, that's right. I was supposed to.
But we circled back.
Yeah,
circled back, and now it's our time to have a conversation with Harry Lawrence. So those of you who are joining, we take a few minutes. We give you folks the opportunity to go ahead and share this video. If you share it, if you go to the bottom and press that share button, you can share it to your friends list. You can share it to a specific group. So if you belong to a creative group, illustration group, a tattoo group, whatever the case might be, you can share it to that group. And if you share, next week we'll be drawing a name for a gift certificate.
Cool.
To get some ink done here. So that's great news. Matt's right behind us. You want to come in and say hey, Matt? Because people will recognize you.
Hi.
Surprise.
A lot of folks that joined us last time, I think, have stepped through these doors and gotten some tattoo work, and so we're
that's a good thing.
Yeah, we're happy about that. Last week we were in Fremont, Ohio.
Okay.
We interviewed a guy up there. His name is Bob Turner. He goes by Crazy Bob, and Bob is plus 65, and so he's had a haunt, an interactive show, and it is up for sale. But we went over there to talk to him about his reflection over 30-some years of doing what he's doing. And we wanted to catch him before that place sold, and so the video was widely viewed. And there is so what we're doing is we're drawing somebody's name. Everybody who shared the video, and there was a lot of them, 67, 70 shares.
Yep.
Yeah, from last week, and that's
cool.
why it pushed near 5,000 views.
That's cool.
But we're going to draw the name, and whoever's name we draw out of here is going to get a, I'd call it a super pack, because they're putting together some tickets and some T-shirts and some different things for that event here. So, Harry, you want to go ahead and...
I get to do it?
You just
All right.
All right, we're going to... You know what we'll do is... Orlando.
All right.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Orlando.
Yeah. We thank everybody for sharing.
Absolutely.
Your support of the creative community here in Ohio and around the United States and beyond is greatly appreciated. But I usually start the interview off with just a question. It's a conversation starter.
Here we go.
After the question, and then we're going to kind of talk about your creative journey. Yeah, we'll reflect back to early years and such. But the creative question that I'm posing to you is, if you could play, or you know, before we jump on, Harry has a rich musical history. He played for Blackfoot, Grizzly, probably a number, probably some other bands.
Oh, yeah.
You have a gold record on the wall,
Yeah.
like Joe Walsh sings.
Yeah.
But considering that musical history,
yes.
If you could play for any band in any year or decade, so you can reflect to say, I want to play for...
This was actually easy for me.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, good. I'm interested in seeing, what year you'd go to years-ish.
Ooh.
Would it be like 70 to 75? Would it be earlier than that? And what band would you...
Probably my number one would be Skynyrd, probably mid-70s, the original Skynyrd lineup. And then as a left turn, I would have loved to have been a part of the Cat Stevens thing. The Cat Stevens has been one of my favorites forever. So two complete opposite ends of the spectrum, but that's kind of where I came from. I enjoyed lyrically the Cat Stevens stuff, but I felt like as a youngster I was looking for that power that Skinner had. So when they came along, it was like, well, these lyrics I can relate to too. So that was it for me. I was hooked up from then on. And so that became the Southern rock journey that I've been on probably ever since. But I like a little bit of everything. Good tunes are good tunes.
Yeah.
You know.
I love that answer.
That was an easy one for me.
Yeah.
Skinner's always been, that's always been my go-to.
Yeah. So, here, you take us back. So, and back is up to you. And that might be childhood, it might be middle years, it may be high school years, to where you kind of knew, or your family knew, that you were a creative and you were going to pursue a journey in the arts.
I appreciate you calling it creative, because I think my family just looked at it as a series of unfortunate mistakes. But I think I was always kind of driven toward drawing and stuff like that. But, as a kid coming up, nobody discouraged it. My mom encouraged it, my family encouraged it, but there's really no way at the time that I knew of to make a living doing that. Mm-hmm. So sometime around high school years, I got involved pretty heavy with music and started playing in bands locally. And my brother at the time started playing guitar, so we would sit together all night long and he would play the same song 40 times until he learned it, But it's kind of weird, because as soon as I graduated high school, my stepdad was a bit of a tyrant, and I had lost my job as soon as that fall, and I just thought, there's no way I can go home and tell him I lost my job. I'll have hell to pay. So I was driving around trying to figure out what to do and what to say, and I ended up at a recruiting office in Berea, and I joined the Navy that day, just without even thinking about it. And I went home and told my mother, and she laughed and thought I was crazy. And then I said, no, I'm leaving in a few months, And I remember my brother and we sat together, and he said, I kind of turned him on to the Skinner stuff, and that's what he was motivated by. And he said, well, I promise you here, he goes, when you're in the Navy, he goes, I'm going to learn every Skinner song, and when you come back, we're going to have a band, and it's going to be playing all them Skinner songs you want to play. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And that October, before I left, was when the plane crashed, and we sat together. I remember sitting together in my room, listening on the radio as reports came in about who had been killed and who might have been killed, and it just, at that moment, it kind of sealed where we were going together as my brother and I. So when I did go off to the service, when I came home, sure as he had a band together, and they knew all them Skinner tunes. And I come home, and he said, hey, we're doing a show at the local auditorium. Do you want to come sing a song? It's like, yeah. And then that kind of never left. And that band was called Freeway Jam, and I did that for a couple years, and then we got some new people, and then in '85 it became Grizzly, and that was the start of Grizzly. And I just left Grizzly a week ago. So it's been 35 years with that, yeah. And then in between, there was the times when I was, doing some of the Blackfoot stuff or doing some of my own stuff. But Grizzly was kind of my go-to for all those years. So that was that path, And it's always been my brother and I, and we've had other people through the years, but that was the stable thing, was he and I. And I just think this year I just kind of came to a point where, with everything that was going on, and I've had some health issues in the last couple of years, and I just decided it's probably passed me by. It's time to relax a little bit. And so he's going to keep it going and do his thing, and I hope it continues long after I'm gone. It's a good band.
How was the experience? So your brother, was that a younger brother? Your younger brother?
He's, almost 7 years younger.
So what was that experience of being big brother, having younger brother, and you guys are making music, recreating, and then creating music together?
It was kind of weird, because at the time we never thought anything about it, because it was the only thing we knew. We had done it that way from the beginning. So, and when he would go off and he had a different project, or I would go off and do a different thing, it's always a little bit strange not looking over to my side and him standing there, Yeah. And so when I decided to let Grizzly go, that was one of the things I just said, is I can't imagine anymore being on a stage and not looking to one side and seeing my brother standing there playing. So, that's the thing for me. It was just always that way. I didn't know any other way.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if it wasn't really odd for us. It just felt like the natural thing, He just gravitated toward playing guitar, and I always wanted to be a singer, so it worked out, No conflict with that. And it was a lot of fun, 35 years, a lot of things happen in 35.
That is a phenomenal run.
It's a long run, yeah. And it's kind of weird because it's like when we started Grizzly in '85, everything was hair metal. Mm-hmm. And we were coming out playing this southern rock stuff, people were like, well, what is this, But they accepted us, and then some local people here that like people like Billy Morris and stuff knew a lot of people in the clubs, and he got us into some of those clubs. And once we were in there, we were okay. We could show them that we could play. It was just we needed somebody to knock the door open, and then we were fine. And then all through the '80s and the '90s was just a lot of craziness. The '80s was a weird time in the world, I think, especially in the creative world, because everybody was kind of going off the rails. But yeah, it was just a fun ride, and I wrote something to my brother the other day, and I just said, no matter what, it's been a great ride.
Does the music that you work on, or that you worked on with Grizzly and with other bands, was that a sprinkle of southern rock? Was it super soaker? Does it have? Do we feel and recognize that kind of Leonard Skinner?
Grizzly's definitely that way.
Yeah.
Grizzly's definitely southern rock all the way. Some of my other stuff was more. I've always been a huge, and it sounds weird because people don't really associate it, but I'm a huge fan of Midwestern rock and roll. Mm. I just think Midwestern rockers, there's something in their lyrics that more people can relate to. And I loved, growing up, everybody was listening to Dio and Black Sabbath and Zeppelin, and I love all those bands. But I couldn't relate to Wizards and Castles and Dragons and all the stuff that they were talking about, And there was something about that Midwest Bob Seger, Grand Funk Railroad, that kind of stuff, the Skinner stuff from the South. I just could relate to it. So my own stuff is kind of in that vein, not necessarily Southern stuff, but more like a Bob Seger-ish probably.
Yeah.
Just that Midwestern thing, like a Michael Stanley kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, there's no pretense about what we're talking about here. It's just, this is something everybody can relate to. Everybody's had a broken heart. Everybody's had this. Everybody's, it's things that everybody can relate to. I just never could relate to Dragons and Wizards. It wasn't my thing. Doesn't mean that it's not great music. I'm not putting any of it down, believe me. Because I loved it. I mean, as a young kid, for me, I was drawn to the power of music, I think.
Yeah.
It had to move you in some way, whether it was lyrically or musically. It had to make the hair go up on your arms, or something like, well, what is this, But I think when everybody was doing that, I was listening to the James Taylors and the Cat Stevens and Joe South and all these songwriters, and the people I went to school with, like, well, what about Sabbath and what about the Eagles? And I really came late to all those bands, But I love it now. But yeah, I was more that songwriter. I was just drawn by that kind of stuff.
Vocals? Was that
Vocals,
your primary?
Yeah, that's what I did. Yeah.
And do you remember the first time that you stepped out on stage for? You might say that first concert. I don't know, whatever that was. But do you remember that stepping up to the mic?
It's probably 1975. There used to be a little place on. Don't quote me if I remember right, but I think it was 117th in Cleveland. It was called the Outside Inn, and it had a little corner stage, and the stage had a tree coming on it, inside of it, and it was called the Outside Inn, and that was the first place I played with a band called Foreplay, that later became the Dogs, and that got me started. And then I formed my own band after that. Was someone else's band that I joined. Then I formed my own, and that was a band called Shadowfax, and I did that for a while until I went into the service. And then when I came home, it was Freeway Jam for a few years, and then Grizzly. So
I remember Scene Magazine.
Flipping
through and seeing all that rich Cleveland history on those
That used
pages.
to be the thing, man. If you were in Scene, you were doing something, And I think everybody, in the '80s, we all had the same dream. We were all going to be huge rock stars, and we were. I think probably about '84, '85, Grizzly bought this little mini bus. We call it the bubble bus because it was like an Airstream, I know. We thought we were going to tear the world apart, you know. But we had a good time, nonetheless.
And your illustration and tattoo work, I understand, is probably just about as long?
Yeah, actually, Grizzly started in '85, and I actually started tattooing in '81. As soon as I got out of the service, I think in general, creative people don't do well at 9 to 5s,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that kind of throws a lot of people for a loop. Like, you know, what are you going to do with your life? Well, I mean, when are you going to get out of this thing you're trying to do and actually get a job? And for me, I could never see it anything other than creativity. And so I got out of the service. I went through all my years in the service, never got a tattoo, and got out and thought, my uncle had a tattoo, and I said, hey, that's really cool. And he goes, I'll take you to the guy. And we went to that shop, and I just started hanging around. And after you hang around long enough, you know, back then it was a whole different game than it is now. But, you know, them old timers didn't want to give up any information. You had to, you know, they run you through the mill. And he, you know, he made me apprentice for like 3 years, just sweeping and mopping and doing the dirty work. And, you know, but after a while of hanging around the shop, he's like, if you're going to be here every day, then I might as well use you. You know what I mean? So, and that I stayed there for about 12 years. And then my girlfriend at the time was getting ready to have my first child, and I just thought, I'm going to need more money than what I can make just taking a percentage. So I opened my own shop, and that's what it's been ever since. You know?
For folks who are sharing, if you share this video out, you could share it to one, you could share it to a group, you could move it out to an artist, an illustration, a tattoo group. You can move it to your friend list. And if you share, next week we'll do a drawing for a gift certificate. So you can
That's
can
cool.
walk through these doors and
Yeah,
get some
that's
ink
awesome.
ink yourself. 81, you said, was
81.
first year. You're doing the apprenticeship.
Yep.
What was that influence, that early ink? Because right now, and now granted, what you'll see, Beth and I, we have no ink.
Right.
I love the art. Our
Right.
girls have ink. Our boys don't, and so
Yeah.
that's just our family at this point.
Yeah.
But take us down like some of those trails of when somebody steps into tattooing, like the artists, the tattoo artists, or the
business
genres, that folks fall into, and how your tattoo style was back then, and maybe what it's.
Honestly, back then it was so different than it is today. It really was kind of. To be honest, I don't think most of us thought of ourselves as artists back then.
Oh.
We were just kind of like misfits looking for a place to fit. And we could draw, and we enjoyed drawing, and it was a way to make a living drawing. But to be an artist like today, you know, people are studying art, they're coming into tattooing with art degrees.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody like that when I started. You know, we were like carnies, you know, and people just floated around. That's what we did, you know.
Yeah.
And the clientele was the same way. So, you know, I think I probably tattooed 8 or 10 years before I tattooed a woman that wasn't connected to a guy that came in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just a girl coming. Like now, we probably do more women than we do men. Back then, that wasn't the case.
Mhm.
You know, back then it was much more a tighter community. Everybody knew everybody. When I started, the guy I learned with was the illustrator out of Elyria, and at the time, he was the only shop between Cleveland and Sandusky. So, you know, you had a line of people for months in advance because you were the only game in town.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But it was also a case of the old timers. The way it was get them in and get them out. You know, zip. You worked as fast as you could. You put it in, solid shading, solid color, get them out the door. That was it. Nowadays, you know, you get these guys that are doing consultations and they're photo referencing everything, and that's great. It's taking the art to places I know I never thought I would see. You know, but it was just a different game then, and the customers were the same way. You know, we worked on outlaws and bikers. You know, people would call you up and, you know, hey Harry, it's no-nose Tony, and he wants to know if you got 5 minutes, you know. And I was like, yeah, tell. And he's like, you know, he'd come in and he'd sit down and go, I got to be out of here within an hour, you know, I got to be out of Cleveland within an hour. It's like, oh, okay, sit down, you know. And then by the late 80s, when it became popular, with the TV shows, really, is when it became popular. And when, for some reason, models started getting tattooed. And then it was all of a sudden, no, it's acceptable for, you know, the average person to have a tattoo. Used to be, you know, if we walked into a bar at the end of the night, people would get up and leave, you know, because we were the tattoo guys. Don't, you know, get away from, you know, we were looked at like the bad guys, you know. And now if you walk into a bar, if there's 12 people there, probably 10 of them say they're tattoo artists, you know. It's just become that thing. And TV did that, and magazines did that. And I think for the younger guys coming in now, they look at it like, what a blessing, it taught me I could do this and blah, blah. For me, as an old timer, it kind of ruined the trade, for me. Because I liked, yeah, we didn't make the money we do now, but if I saw you on the street, you knew me, I knew you, we could sit down, we could have a conversation, we could share a beer or a drink, and it was more tight, you know. And now it's just become like this factory where people are coming in and coming out, and you do develop friendships, and some people become like family after a while.
Yeah.
But it's just a way different thing, and it's like everything in the world. I guess at some point it passes you by, and you know, you either keep up with it or you don't. And I've tried, but realistically, I mean, there's guys like Matt coming in that are doing things that I'm just like, yeah, no, if I have to do that, I'll take my toys and go home. What I do is what I do. You know, I'm a black and gray artist. You know, I don't do. When I started, everything was done with a single needle. Now I wouldn't touch a single needle if you paid me. You know what I mean? It's just I'm not doing it. But I tell people the thing about tattooing for me is it didn't always give me what I wanted, but it always gave me enough to keep going.
Yeah.
You know, every time I got to the point where I thought, I can't do this anymore, I got to get a regular job. Then you'd have a week that would make you go, oh man, I'm good for the next month. You know what I mean? And I think that's the creative part that drove everybody I've ever been around crazy. Because it's like, no, you're living like a pauper for 3 weeks and then you live like a king for a week. It's like, yeah, but I'm okay with that. I'm good for the next month. It's just a mindset, I think, that makes us who we are, you know. Creative people in general, I saw it in music the same way, you know. You can't take a musician and put them in a 9 to 5 and expect them to be happy.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not going to work.
And I imagine that 90% of people who are clicking in and going to watch this video, by the way, for time reference, it is beginning of June in 2020. We're coming out the back end of the pandemic. We're starting to open up, and so I know a few weeks ago we brought that petition to get the tattoo shops and artists back to work, and a bunch of people signed it in our Tuesday at 7 community. We thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with that, 90% of the creatives, I think, that tune into this can relate to that, right? Yeah. And it's like, meaning that when you sit down a creative, we talk differently.
Yes.
Right?
We think with a different side of the brain. We really do.
Yeah.
You know, logic and you know, making sure that we have a pension and making sure that we have a 401. That was never my motivation. Music was, I mean, in music or art, money was never my motivation. It was never like, well, if I can't make this, I'm not going to do this. It was just, and even there have been times when I've lost everything. You know, there have been times I've made crazy money and lived like a king, and there's times I've lost everything. But it was like, I never thought I couldn't tattoo. I always had to tattoo. So even if I had to do something else to get me through a moment of hard time, tattooing was always what I was going to be.
Yeah.
You know, or playing music was always what I was going to be. It's like, and I think that's true for most tattoo artists that I know. I don't think they can imagine themselves doing it, at least the successful ones, you know. And now, honestly, there's great artists. Northern Ohio is saturated with great artists. There really is. You know, it used to be you had to really search high and low to find good artists, and you know, and nowadays it seems like every shop has an artist that's doing things that we didn't think possible back then. So for that, I feel like tattooing's in good hands moving forward. I just think for like, maybe for people like me that have been around 40 years, you know, I look at it and go, I guess it's probably passed me by, you know. But this is what I do, so this is what I'm going to do until I die. I'm going to have to work till I die, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because I don't think I've ever really had to work.
And that paycheck is not what drives
No.
us. There's a fulfillment
It is.
in, you know, and whether somebody writes and finishes a book or a poem, or they finish just the right
Yep.
chord progression
Oh,
for a
yeah.
song, or they step in front of a stage, or they just complete a tattoo and they're like, now that, or
Yep.
they get in that creative
Oh,
zone and there's
absolutely.
like, everything's falling
Yep.
right. That's what fulfills me.
That's what it is.
That's
And
what
I
it
think
is.
that's what it is for every truly creative person.
Yeah.
You know, if you go, the Cleveland music scene is a good example, where there are people out here that I've known for 30 some years that are amazing musicians,
Mhm.
but you're not going to make money playing bars anymore. That kind of day is gone. I made more money in the 80s playing locally than I do now, but they can't imagine anything else.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing like, you know, on a Friday night when you know you have a gig that night and it's at one of your favorite clubs and you walk in and the place is wall to wall. It's like, oh yeah, I would do it for free, but you don't tell the bar owner that. You know? But I would have done it for free, you know. And there's times when I sit here and I think somebody will bring me a design and it's just so right up my alley. I think, you know, if I didn't have bills, I'd do this stuff for free. I really would. It's just there. And you know, there's people far better than I am, but there's nobody doing it longer than I am, I don't think, locally. You know.
And with that mention, so you're, I mean, I think it would be accurate if I were to say you're a Cleveland trailblazer in terms of the tattoo art, right? I mean, there were people ahead of you.
Yeah,
but-
there were some people that have really put, you know, I would never have been available around if they hadn't paved the way for me. You know, guys like that old G&G, you know, George and Jeff, the illustrator, who taught me, you know, he came in from New Jersey and he was like the first one out this way and really was doing it. And that's what I tell guys coming in now. It's like,
Yeah.
don't think, I know you look at these guys that you see in magazines, you watch Ink Master and you see these young people, and that's who you gear yourself up to be, but never forget that there was somebody who paid a price so that you could make money today. Because we didn't make money. I remember when I started telling Jeff, man, if I could make $25, $30 a day, I'll be great. And now it's like $30 a day, you know, it doesn't get you anywhere. But he was just that guy that was just, and those old timers like that, they deserve all the respect. Because really, it was a different thing. You were looked at like a piece of garbage. You know, being tattoo artists wasn't a cool thing when I started.
Mhm.
We were scummy to people. You know, we were the guys you avoided. We were, you know, and so now that it's accepted, that's great. But people tend to forget that, hey, there was somebody here that made this possible, and made it possible for me. I wouldn't be here if Jeff hadn't decided I was enough of a pest to at least give me a shot, you know. And that's really what it was. I just came in so often. He's like, well, you might as well do something, you know. But yeah, but you know, I'm sure that there have been people that I brought into it that I hope one day will look back and go, well, thanks to Harry, I'm able to do, yeah.
Pave that way.
And then someday there'll be somebody who looks at them and says, hey, thanks for you bringing, you know, I'm able to do what I love to do. It just continues, but I certainly wasn't the first one out here in this area, but I'm grateful for every one of them because they did it at a time when it sure wasn't popular, man.
And you're still taking appointments too, right?
Oh yeah, I still work every day.
Well, I'll
Yeah.
tell you what. For folks out there who have a palette or a spot open, maybe this is the time to grab some.
Yeah, I don't know how much longer I got.
Start lining up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to start lining up. How has your music, stories, cultural experience, history affected your ink? In other words, if you were to reflect back, I mean, how do they merge? How do they fuse, or do they run separate swim lanes?
Well, that's a good question. I think in order to do what I do,
Mhm.
I had to have that mindset initially that was just, I'm just a free, I say it and people laugh about it, but really it's like kind of like a carny attitude. It's like, if I end up here, I'll make a living there. And when I started tattooing, I remember telling somebody, no matter where I go in this world, I can find somebody at the end of the day to give me a sandwich for a tattoo. I'll never go hungry because I can take that anywhere. And I think that for a lot of those old timers, that's what it was. You know, they just traveled wherever. They ran in circuses and fairs and stuff like that. And I think that mentality is what allows us to be what we are, because if we thought differently, you couldn't do this. It's
Yeah.
a certain mindset to, and that's why I think, and I've known a lot of tattoo artists through the years, and it's been really hard for a lot of them to keep relationships together, for instance, because it's hard to have a family and raise a family when you don't know if you're going to have, $1,000 this week or $100 this week. That's tough when you have kids and you have a wife and you have house payments, and that's tough for somebody to rely on. But for tattoo artists, it's the only way we know. So you do kind of learn how to pull this way and save this and that, and it took me a while. In the summertime when it was busy, I would live like a king, and in the winter I'd starve. And then it was like, well, this is stupid. Why don't I just save some of the summer stuff? But we don't think that way logically, and I think it takes us longer. But I don't know. I just think that I couldn't have been either a musician or a tattoo artist if I didn't have that free kind of, wherever I end up today is where I'm going to be, and that'll be my home for the night.
Yeah.
And I think that's tough for a lot of people to live with. And I think it's been tough for people that have cared about me and loved me, because they feel like there's no security in that. And maybe there wasn't, but I was okay with that, And I kind of look at it now like there's been a lot of mistakes I've made, but they've all been mine, and I've owned every one of them. And I'm sure if you ask 100 tattoo artists, they tell you the same thing. Anybody who's been tattooing 25 or 30 years has got the same story. We came up at a time when it was a lot rougher, it wasn't unusual to see somebody get knocked out in a tattoo shop. It wasn't unusual. Nobody talked bad to a tattoo artist, because if you did, you got your head slapped. You know what I mean? It was just a different culture. Nowadays, you get people that come in and they talk to you like, man, I wouldn't talk to anybody like that,
Yeah.
But because it's a business and you're trying to do the right thing, it's changed that way. So culturally, it affects us today, because I can't be when I came into this, what I was. I have to be polite now, and I have to be courteous. And it used to be, if you're dealing with other guys like us, and the guy says something mouthy, or he steps out of line, he got his ass beat. That's just the way it was. And nobody looked twice. And he didn't complain afterwards. Hey, sorry, I shouldn't have said that. Nowadays it's it's a regular business. You have to be polite and courteous, and that's cool. It's cool because it's gained us acceptance in places we couldn't have. It's allowed everybody to make a better living, and the level of artistry that's coming into the craft today is far better than it was. It is. There's just something that was lost with that time, that magical time, and I didn't even get the best of it. I think, those guys who tattooed in the 60s and 70s probably got the best of that age, but I still caught enough of it to understand what it was.
To know
yeah,
it was
to know
magical,
it.
right?
And so now it's like I miss it, because that's what I was comfortable with, It's like when you ask somebody what their favorite music is, it's almost always what they listened to in high school.
Yeah.
Because that's when your life was carefree and it was fun, and so that music is what you relate to that. And for me, that's what I relate in tattooing. I relate to those guys. If somebody comes in like that now, an old gruff guy, and he's pissy and whatever, it's like, yeah, I'm cool with it. I got you. You know what I mean? I'm just used to it. But it has elevated the art. And there are people coming in now with art degrees and doing things amazing. It's in good hands.
Yeah.
It's in good hands. But, the stuff on the walls, nobody gets it anymore.
Yeah.
And the first 10, 12 years I tattooed, nobody got anything except what was on the wall.
Yeah.
And they didn't have a choice. Well, I like this. Can I get it in blue? No, it's red. That's what it is. Well, can I get a little smaller? No, that's what it is. And now you're spending a week on a drawing for somebody where, that's a good thing. I get it. But it's just it's changed so much, I sometimes don't recognize it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Is there a point, where I'm sure you felt the change, like you said, in the 80s as it was shifting in TV and stuff, but in your day-to-day experiences, was there a click where there was that one day or that one customer and you're like, oh yeah, we've definitely moved into a new era?
I think probably the 90s, early 90s is when we started seeing, instead of shops doing $25 or $30 tattoo minimum, was now an $80 minimum. And I'm going, well, and I was kind of late to the game because that wasn't the way I was brought into the game, So it took me a while to catch on, but then I'm thinking, these guys are walking around going, well, I get X number of dollars an hour, It's like, well, when did you start charging per hour? And then all of a sudden, you know, in the 90s, anybody who had a shop in the 90s, honestly, it was almost like printing money. I mean, it was like stupid money. And that's when you saw guys, you know, 5 bikes and 2 cars, and I knew a guy that had a plane and a Tiger, and you know, it was like, what the hell's going on here? You know, we used to be sleeping in 4 of us in a room somewhere, you know. But that, and I think the 90s is when it really kind of opened up to new, and then you started seeing these young people coming in. Well, can I apprentice? And it's like, oh sure. Have you had any drawing? Well, yeah, I just got a Bachelor of Art degree from. Can you show me how? You know, I think the 90s what did it really. The 80s was still very much, you pick something off the wall, you sat in a chair, that's what you got, you know. And the 90s became all custom stuff, and you know, much more artistically stretching the boundaries of what we thought could be done, and the money went through the roof, you know. And then, like everything, once it becomes that popular, everybody wants to be it, and then the money disappears again. Because now instead of 5 shops in a town, you've got 500 shops in a town. You know, there's 4 or 5 shops here in this little town. You know, yeah. And we used to, honestly, Jeff was the only shop between Cleveland and Sandusky, and there was an old guy, Sandusky and Son, up there who'd been there forever, great guy. And you know, you had George on the east side, great guy, and Jeff was here. So if you were west of Cleveland and you wanted a tattoo, you had to come to us.
Yeah.
You know, and now, you know, you're not going to pull from Cleveland because they got to pass 30 shots to get to us. You know.
With, I'm sure that if we were to sit down and tip back a couple cold ones, we'd probably have a lot of cool. I'd be all ears and listen to the stories of people who sat in your chairs and places that you've inked and tattooed. What is the human skin as a canvas? And in terms of somebody walks in, either somebody you know and you've been working on, or somebody you don't know steps down, and you're creating something permanent.
Yeah.
And is there a component to that attracts or attracted you to the tattoo, or was it more the art than the?
You know, it'll sound kind of, initially I think it was just a way for me to make a living doing art. And then when you start working, like probably in the first 4 or 5 years I worked, you know, Jeff taught me when I started, you know, make sure whatever you do while you're tattooing, you can lay your head down at night and not be ashamed of what you did.
Yeah.
And so it became more like, and it sounds weird now, I know people are going to make fun of it, but it's almost like you're giving a little piece of spirit when you do it.
Yeah.
You're putting a little piece of yourself in there, because for me, it's the greatest form of artwork you can. If I tattoo an 18-year-old today and I die tomorrow, there's going to be a piece of me walking around for the next 60, 70 years. You know, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, and there have certainly been times when I lost sight of that, but I think it's something that you owe every person who sits in that chair. It's not just, you know, I'll make $100 or I'll make 50. It's, you know, this person has to carry that the rest of their life, and what you're doing can affect how they do the rest of their life. I mean,
yeah.
I've turned away a ton of people who come in when it became popular to get your face done or your neck done. Look, you're 18 years old. You have no other tattoos. I'm not tattooing your face. I'm not doing your hands if you don't have tattoos all over your body, because I don't think you understand what it means to be tattooed. It's far more accepted, but there's still a group of people that go, I don't know, man. You know, it's a little shaky. And so, you know, those are like fried tattoos.
Yeah.
Because to me, if I was to take an 18-year-old and tattoo their face for their first time, I'm basically telling that kid, the rest of your life is going to be, do you want fries with that?
Yeah.
You know, you're cutting off a portion. Now, if you come to me and you're completely tattooed and you say, hey, I want something on my neck, you understand what it means.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I think somewhere in the 90s it became so crazy money-wise that people were doing anything. And with no thought to how it's going to affect that person down the road. And I get it. You know, everybody wants to make a living and everybody's trying to establish a name. But I never forgot that Jeff always told me, at the end of the day, make sure you can lay your head down. You haven't hurt anybody. You haven't screwed anybody over. You haven't taken anything from somebody that you shouldn't have. And that just meant a lot to me. You know, for me, my apprenticeship was probably as much about a father figure as it was an art figure. You know, I learned probably more about life from Jeff than I did from my stepdad, you know. And I carried that with me, so it is important to me, you know what I mean? I don't want, and honestly now at this point, if somebody comes in and they want a piece that I feel I can't do justice to, and I know Matt can, I shift them to Matt, or I shift them to another guy, or you know, whoever can do that piece best is who I want to do it.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
I think that's kind of got lost somewhere along the line sometimes, you know.
If folks share, next week we're going to pull a gift certificate for some ink work here at
Yep.
King Crow Tattoo. And what, so share out to your group. And if you have any questions, shoot those over. We're going to come to those questions here in just a moment, because I have a couple things that I want to inquire about, and that is, I understand that that there's some work on a tattoo alliance, and is that yeah?
Yeah, actually, I tried like probably 25 years ago or so. I had a shop in North Ridgeville, and I was trying to move closer into Cleveland. And at the time, it wasn't legal anywhere. You know, people don't understand, but Cleveland being open to tattooing is a relatively new thing, probably 10, 12 years, you know. And so I would fight these cities in front of City Hall and get nowhere. And I just thought, like 25 years ago, if we put all of us together, we could hire a lawyer to handle all of us, and then everybody would have equal standing when we walk in, instead of me fighting the city of Fairview or Rocky River or wherever I was trying to get Lakewood. I tried to get in Lakewood 25 years ago. We would have some backing. We would have, instead of me being Harry Lawrence fighting the city, it would be the Ohio Tattoo Alliance with 100 members. You know, and that, I felt like that would hold more, and not one guy was willing to do it. So when this whole pandemic thing came around, and it looked like we weren't going to be able to open like when other services were able to, which, you know, kind of irked us all, because when it came time to shut us down, we're always included with hair salons and stuff like that. But all of a sudden, we don't get to open when they get to open, you know. So a friend of mine contacted me and said, you should reconsider that tattoo alliance and maybe get it going again. Use the same idea and see what. And so I thought about it, and I thought, you know, it's a good idea. And if it gets people on board, at least, like you say, to sign that petition that went around, that made a big difference, you know. And there was a girl who had helped me out with that petition. She had already started something, and I just thought, if we can't do it now, we're never going to do it. And I put it up again, and then probably 2 or 3 days later is when they approved us going back to work.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, that interest, everybody went back to their, you know. And that's the thing about tattoo artists, I think, is that we all know each other, and we all, at least for me, I can speak for myself, I appreciate everybody's artwork, but in reality, everybody's looking for themselves. Because there's so many shops now, hey, that guy, he does great work, but I gotta make a living too. So it's tough to get everybody on the same page, come together and form one solid coalition of any kind, because what does that leave me? And then who's gonna be in charge? Are they gonna speak for me? And I get it, that's the creative person. It's like why bands don't last very long, you know? There's always one guy who's the boss, and everybody else is like, well, how come he's getting the notice, you know? And I think that's just how we think, so that's really tough. I do still think that it has a place, and if we could ever get it to work, it would be a great idea. Like, you know, when they finally started to regulate us, and we started reading what they were asking us to do, it's like, whoever wrote these laws has no idea how we do this.
Yeah.
You know, they were asking for things that we couldn't give them. And it's because they didn't know anything about our business. So I thought, let's get people on board with this. Let's put somebody on these boards that decides what laws are going to be in place. And it's just a tough thing to do. You know, everybody's kind of an individual thinker and a free creative thinker, and it's tough to get everybody to come on one page. I wish it would happen. I still wish it would happen.
Well, I imagine that there's folks in the audience that are going to watch, and I would imagine that at some point, maybe even sooner than later, then that, you know, to kind of resurrect that idea of an alliance might be a good idea, right?
It'd be great. There's a Facebook page we put up when the whole thing started, Ohio Tattoo Alliance. They can go to there, and anybody. There's a thing on there if you're interested in becoming like a member, maybe down the road. If you're interested in getting this thing rolling, you can send us. There's an email address, and You can send us a link to who you are, your contact information, and we'll keep you on board. You know what I mean? I would just like to see, and frankly, I don't care as long as it's a reputable guy in charge. It doesn't have to be me.
Yeah.
I would just like to see. My time in tattooing is coming to an end, realistically. I mean, I'm 62 this year. You know, 40 years is a long time to do something. At some point, I'm not going to be doing this anymore, and it'd be nice if the next generations have something they can fall back on and go, you know, hey, we can fight this, we can do this, you know, we can make ourselves whatever we want to be. Like every other business, we just kind of slow to the party. You know, we're like kind of tough getting to that party. So I hope it works. I hope it happens.
Yeah.
Do the tattoo conventions don't have anything like
Alliance-wise?
Yeah, or you know, just access to legal or insurance services or
You know, there are
that kind of stuff.
when tattooing became popular in the 90s, all of a sudden there were insurance companies that jumped on board. Well, we'll insure your company, we'll insure your business. Where before I couldn't, when I started, I couldn't get insurance. Nobody wanted to touch us.
Sure.
Now there are companies doing it, but there's still no
It's not
tattoo alliance
cohesive.
among artists where we can say, hey, you know, let's fight this together. Let's stand up together. Let's make a name for ourselves together. If you want to, you know, when I started tattooing, there was a guy named Ed Hardy. Everybody knows Ed Hardy because of the clothes, but Ed Hardy was like a grandfather of this business for us. And I remember seeing a documentary about him way back in the day, and he went to work every day in a suit and tie, and he got to work and he put a lab coat on, and the guy doing the documentary said, you know, you're a tattoo artist, what are you doing? And he said, yeah, but if I want to be treated with respect and be considered a professional, I need to act that way. And it just resonated that, yeah, where have we been? You know, this guy got it 30 years before anybody else did, you know what I mean? And it's true, and I just think if we could come together like that, we could accomplish a whole lot more as a group of artists. But, you know, everybody's individuals. That's just what it is. And we're nomads, really. I mean, it's if you get an artist that sticks with you 10, 12, 13 years, that's so rare.
Yeah.
You know, guys kind of float around from shop to shop, and it's just who we are. We're carnies. You know?
Yeah. We have any questions out there?
We don't have any questions. We have a huge amount of love. So, and then I have one interesting comment that I'm excited to read about. But so we've got Mike Biebel saying hello, Lisa Anguilano, Mindy Kreitch says I could talk with him for hours. Brian Wilson says, hey Harry, good to see you, my friend. Wish you well. Say hi to Roger for me. John Podgman says I'm ready for my next one. Laura Harden says nothing but love and respect for you as a musician, tattoo artist, and dear friend. Rose Scarcipino, I'm sorry, I probably just slaughtered. She says she's ready for another one. Terry Blank says hi, but Paul Tylicki Jr. says Blackfoot did a coffee break concert at the Old Agora, and I was there, and it burned down later that day.
Night. Yep.
That's amazing.
We were at the Holiday Inn downtown when the word came that the building was burning.
Wow.
And it was like, wow, it's just hours before we were there. And then that next time they were back, they had a piece of the stage mounted in a frame up on the wall, and everybody in the band signed it. It was really cool. Hank was a really cool guy. But yeah, that's true. It burned down the night of the coffee break concert.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Blackfoot. Technically, that's your trivia question. Blackfoot was the last band to play the Old Agora.
Ah, all right. That is good information. to
And
have.
Paul was there.
Wow.
And Paul was there.
Paul was there.
Way to go, Paul.
And I think Dirk Garman.
Dirk Garman is the guitar player from Grizzly.
Okay, so that's what I thought. He's married to Jen, who I went to high school with.
Oh, wow.
And I kept hearing Grizzly, and I'm like, oh shoot, I think that's Dirk's band.
Yeah.
And so,
Dirk's a great player.
Yeah. Yep.
He's been on board the last couple of years. Yeah.
Small world.
That's amazing.
It is.
Yep.
Small world.
And then
Any other comments before?
it just everybody loves you.
Wow.
Well, the one thing we'll say is if you're kind of joining in and you've missed it, if you share, then you get the opportunity for to win a certificate. So you can get some ink here. We'll draw that name out next week. Orlando actually won the giant hydro pack. So congratulations last week. Matt, you had something you wanted to share for the?
Oh,
What's your thought?
I'll step over here. So you can actually see me. Stay there.
Don't scare
Basically,
'em.
we mentioned it before.
Don't scare them.
We mentioned it before. If you mention Tuesday at 7 when you come in here, we're going to give you 25% off your tattoos. So.
And speaking of that, so for those people who are just starting to watch, to check in to see what's going on with Harry and the tattoo shop, if you join Tuesday at 7, there's an interview every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. This interview will be up on YouTube and accessible through there, so you can share it with people going forward, either from the Tuesday at 7 site or from YouTube.
And
then
Tuesday at 7,
now-
it's the TUES,
Yes.
the at sign at 7, no spaces, and it is a Facebook group. And
Yep.
we use it as
Oh,
a
cool.
Facebook group. It's where a community of creatives, both in Ohio and
That's cool.
we have folks as far as, from different countries as well that tune in. And
So Randy Cross says, Harry did my tattoo many, many years ago. My wife was his first tattoo.
She was
that
among the
right?
first. That's probably true. They were my
Wow.
next door neighbors in Columbia Station.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's
Thank
right.
you for watching, Randy.
That's very cool.
Fantastic. So yeah, if you are coming here for a tattoo, and we highly recommend it, there's some good artists here, and say Tuesday at 7 and get 20% off your
25.
tattoo.
25. We're going to move it to 25.
Even better, 25%
So-
off your tattoo.
we're at King Crow Tattoo and Social Club. We're on the west side. What's the easiest way to find?
Right off of 480, you get off on Stearns. You go up to Lorraine Road, hang a right, and we're the second plaza on the right.
Right past Sunoco.
Right past Sunoco, yeah.
And if they search King Crow Tattoo
Yep.
Cleveland, you'll find a Facebook page.
Yep,
you'll
we got
find
Facebook, we got a
Facebook page,
website, we
website.
got Google page.
And really off of 480, it's maybe a minute.
Yep.
You know, pretty easy to get to.
How many artists do you
We
have?
have 3 of us here right now, and Robert's our apprentice, so
Great.
hopefully 4 soon.
and you have tap out where you'll have long sessions and opportunities for people to come in and
Yeah, we do tap out sessions.
What is
depending
that?
on the time of the year. It's instead of saying, I'm going to do a piece for you and it's going to cost you X number of dollars. If for people who have like an idea, they want to get a whole sleeve or they want to get the whole back done, you can come in. You can do a tap out, which means you can either book 4 hours and we'll do as much as we can do in 4 hours, or you can do 6 hours. You can do 8 hours, and by doing that, it works for us because we have an artist now who knows he's got a day booked. And so you get a better rate that way instead of, whatever the normal rate was, like an 8-hour tap out, you may get for, depending on time of the year, maybe $600, which is a big discount over normal. And then as much as we can get done in 8 hours.
yeah.
So a lot of people take advantage of that when they have bigger plans, sleeves, or they want a back or they want a whole chest done, or they have a really complicated design that's going to take, it's usually cheaper if you do the block. Because if I have to charge you hourly and it's going to take 6 hours, you're better off just booking the 6 hours and taking the discount. So, yeah, we do have that, and we run that pretty much all the time. The only thing that changes is sometimes in the summer, the tap out may be a little bit more. It's usually $100 more in the summertime because it gets busier, and so to block that time aside is more of a hindrance. Not a hindrance, but you're taking a bigger chunk of time away from other people. So,
Yeah.
it's a little bit more, but yeah. We do it all the time. If you're
Yeah.
interested in big pieces, we'll draw any design you have. You don't have to necessarily have a design. If you just have an idea and you say, I'd like this, but it's got to fit here, and I want this, and this added to it, we'll do that drawing for you. Have you come in, check it out, make any changes you like, and then we'll do it like that. Or if you have a design in particular you like, the only thing we try to do is, it became popular with social media and everything. All of a sudden, people come in and they're like, I saw this design on Instagram, or I saw this design on Pinterest, and it's like, yeah, but if I'm not going to copy someone's work exactly, so we can take that idea and modify it and make it your own, but let's change it a little bit, and we do that all the time. So there's really nothing anymore that you can think of that people won't get done. We can do portraits, you can do black and gray, you can do full color, you can do half and some color and a black and there's really no limit to what you can do anymore, and you don't have to pick anything off the wall, which was kind of limiting before. Now it's whatever your heart desires. We'll find a way to make it work. And I pretty much have a core of artists here that no matter what style you pick, like I say, if it's something that I know I'm not comfortable doing, or I won't do it the same justice that another guy will, I'll pass it to the guy who's going to give you the best tattoo. Because at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want you to leave and be happy, because that word of mouth is what brings the next person in.
Yeah. And cover-ups and,
Cover-ups we do,
and
yep.
you do as well.
Yep. We also have a program Matt and I started called the Race to Hate, and one Sunday a month we'll take somebody who has like maybe a racial tattoo or a gang-related tattoo that they got earlier in life and now they regret getting it, and we'll do a free cover-up for that person. So, you know, people send us ideas, this is what I got, and we can't do it all the time, but we'll pick a couple people on that one Sunday, and Matt'll do one or I'll do one, and we try to help those people out. Just, it's free. You know, if you're interested in that kind of thing and you have something like that and you don't want to carry around as a burden anymore, you can contact the shop. We'll be happy to look at your design, see what we can do to if it's possible to cover it with something. And, you know, feel free to contact us. We'll work with you on anything we can, you know, because that's a heavy, you know, that can be a heavy thing to carry around.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, Harry, thank you for
Thank you,
joining
Roger.
us.
I appreciate it.
I've enjoyed hearing the stories.
Yeah.
I'm going to put Blackfoot and some Grizzly songs on my playlist so I can catch them up on YouTube. Your musical history is deep. We love the fact that you've paved the way for tattoo art and for at least the Cleveland scene, because it was an important road to travel, and you did some of that heavy lifting early on, and,
Well, I
and we
appreciate
thank you for that.
And I appreciate the people who paved it for me.
Yeah.
There's a lot of them.
Guys, we look forward to seeing you again next week. Thank you for spending your time with us, and we'll catch up there. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Take care.